Hello, everyone. You are on the Storm to Truth channel, and the page starts like this. One day, I left work earlier than usual. I didn't have anything special planned. I just heard that a store nearby was having a big sale on fruits and vegetables, so I decided to check it out. As I was walking down the street, something caught my attention. There, across the street, was Emily with some guy I had never seen before. He was leaning toward her, saying something, but I couldn't make out what it was. His back was turned, so I couldn't see his face, but the way he was standing wasn't friendly. There was some kind of energy between them, something special, like they weren't just talking. My heart started racing. I told myself it was probably nothing, but that gut feeling, the one I'd been trying to ignore for weeks, was screaming at me. I froze for a second, trying to figure out what to do, when they suddenly got into his car. Without thinking, I bolted across the street, ducking behind a parked van so I could watch them without being seen. They drove off, and before I even knew what I was doing, I found myself running back to my own car. I didn't even think, I just followed them. My mind was racing, my palms were sweaty on the wheel as I kept my distance. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing, but the pit in my stomach told me I needed to know the truth, no matter how bad it was. They drove for a while, leaving the busy streets of downtown behind, heading toward the outskirts of town where the roads were quieter. Finally, they pulled into a parking lot behind some random run-down motel. My breath caught in my throat. This couldn't be happening. Not this. Please, not this. I parked a little way down the road, hidden behind some trees, and watched as Emily and this guy got out of the car. And then it happened. Something strange, something that made my skin crawl. Emily wasn't the Emily I knew. She looked around nervously, like she was checking to see if anyone had followed them. Her posture was different, tense, almost like she knew this wasn't right. But what shocked me the most was the way she turned to him. She kissed him, not a quick peck, not the kind of kiss you'd give a friend. It was intimate, slow, and full of something I hadn't seen from her in months. It felt like the air was knocked out of my lungs. I wanted to move, to get out of the car and confront them right there. But I couldn't. I just sat there, frozen, watching my wife with this stranger, realizing everything I thought I knew was a lie. I kept replaying everything over and over in my mind, like I was stuck in a loop, trying to make sense of it all. Damn it! I remember his face that day. It was a rainy afternoon, and we had a rare bit of free time. We'd decided to grab lunch at this little Italian place we loved. Just a casual meal, nothing out of the ordinary. The weather was bad, so the restaurant was nearly empty, and we were in no rush. We ordered pasta and 2 cappuccinos, and that's when I first noticed him. Fred, a tall, handsome, blonde waiter who served us that day. I remember Emily made some offhand comment about him, joking about how attractive he was. I didn't think much of it at the time. I mean, people joke, right? It wasn't the first time she'd commented on someone being good-looking, and I never really cared before. I was secure in our relationship. I was sure about Emily. But looking back now, that moment is burned into my memory. I can't help but wonder if that was where it started. The way she smiled at him, laughed a little too long at some dumb joke he made, it all seems so obvious now. How could I have been so blind? I didn't pay attention back then, because I never thought she'd stray. Not Emily, not my wife, but now I see it was a mistake to ignore it. A big mistake. Because Fred wasn't just a random waiter. He's the guy. The one I'd seen her with at the motel. The same tall, blonde man who had served us that day, who she had flirted with right in front of me, and I didn't even blink. Now, it all fit together in the worst possible way. I wanted to scream, to drive back home and confront her right then and there, but my head was spinning. How long had this been going on? Was that lunch the first time they'd met, or had something been brewing before that? And worst of all, how could I have missed the signs? I felt like a complete idiot, sitting there in the dark, my whole marriage unraveling in front of me. I drove home in a daze, the rain beating down on my windshield as if the world was crying with me. My mind was racing with a million thoughts, each one more painful than the last. I pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight of our home suddenly feeling foreign and hostile. I sat there for a moment, staring at the front door, wondering what kind of facade awaited me on the other side. The home we'd built together, the laughter and love that had once filled these walls, now felt like a cruel joke. I walked in, trying to act normal, as if I hadn't just watched the woman I loved with another man. Emily was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up and smiled at me, and for a split second, it almost felt like everything was okay. But then I remembered the kiss, the motel, and the man I never wanted to know. My stomach twisted. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice light and cheerful. "How was work?" "Fine," I managed to reply, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Got off early to grab some groceries." "Oh, good thinking," she said, her attention turning back to the chopping board. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to drag it out, to gather my thoughts and plan my words carefully. But the other part, the part that was aching, furious, and desperate for answers, was pushing me forward. "Emily," I said, my voice low but steady, "we need to talk." She paused, turning to look at me with a hint of confusion in her eyes. "What's wrong?" That's when it hit me. How do you even begin to unravel this? I had just watched my wife betray me, and here she was, standing in our kitchen, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between us. "Did you have lunch at that Italian restaurant a while back?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm despite the turmoil inside. Her brow furrowed. "Yeah, I think so. Why?" Also, dear viewers, do not forget to like and subscribe to new interesting stories published every day, and so on. I took a deep breath, forcing the words out despite the tremor in my hands. "The waiter, Fred. Did he mean anything to you?" She hesitated, the shift in her demeanor instantly palpable. "What are you talking about?" "Stop playing games, Emily. I saw you with him. At the motel," I blurted out, my anger bubbling to the surface. "I saw you kiss him." Her expression changed. Shock morphed into denial, and then anger flashed across her face. "What? You've got to be kidding me!" "Do I look like I'm kidding?" I snapped, my voice rising. "I followed you. I saw everything." "I can't believe you would spy on me. That's so messed up," she shouted back, crossing her arms defensively. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "No idea?" I felt the heat rise in my chest. "I saw you, Emily. I watched you with him. You were so caught up in whatever you were doing that you didn't even think twice about it." She looked away, biting her lip. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. What was going on? Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like cheating. "It was just a kiss. It didn't mean anything," she shot back. But there was a flicker of guilt in her eyes, a crack in her facade that told me there was more to the story. "Just a kiss?" I echoed, disbelief crashing over me. "What does that even mean? You don't just kiss someone unless there's something there, Emily. You've been lying to me." Her voice softened, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the woman I married. "I'm sorry. I was confused. It was a mistake. I was feeling lost, and he was just there for me." "Just there for you?" I could hardly process her words. "You were looking for something in another man. What about me, Emily? What about us?" She stepped closer, desperation creeping into her voice. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just feeling so distant from you. It felt like we were drifting apart, and I was trying to find something to hold on to." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "So, you thought cheating would solve that? You thought kissing him would fix our marriage?" "I didn't think. I just got caught up in the moment. I swear I didn't mean to hurt you," she pleaded, her voice trembling. The weight of her words hung heavy between us, but I couldn't let her excuses drown out the pain. "This isn't something you can just brush off, Emily. I need time to think." "I love you," she cried, desperation evident in her eyes. "I made a mistake. Please don't leave me." But the damage was done. The cracks in our foundation had grown too wide to ignore. I turned away, fighting back the tears as I walked out of the kitchen. The home that had once been filled with love and laughter felt cold and empty, and I didn't know if I could ever feel at home there again. I stormed out of the kitchen and into the living room, my heart racing and my mind a whirlwind of emotions. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands, trying to catch my breath. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the walls closing tighter with every breath I took. I was reeling from everything that had just happened. It was hard to fathom that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd committed my life to, was standing in the kitchen just minutes ago, claiming to love me while also betraying me. The silence in the house was deafening, amplifying the turmoil inside me. How could this be happening? How had we gotten here? I thought about all the late nights she claimed were work-related, the missed calls, the sudden distance between us. Were those moments all just lies? I felt a mix of anger and deep sadness washing over me. I was furious at Emily, at the situation, at myself for being so blind. But even more so, I was heartbroken. I had devoted myself to her completely, believing we were building a life together. And now, in one afternoon, everything had unraveled. I replayed the moments leading up to this. The sweet nothings we used to whisper to each other before bed, the plans we made for the future, the dreams of growing old together. It felt like a cruel illusion. How had the laughter in our home turned into whispers of infidelity and heartbreak? I could hear Emily's footsteps in the kitchen, the sound of pots clattering as she prepared dinner, but I couldn't face her right now. I didn't want to talk or argue. I felt like I was living in some twisted nightmare, and I needed to escape it. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my contacts aimlessly, searching for someone to talk to. I thought about calling a friend, but I couldn't bring myself to share this raw pain. I was ashamed, embarrassed. I didn't want to be that guy, the one whose wife cheated on him. As I sat there, staring blankly at the wall, my mind spiraled into darker places. I thought about my children and what this meant for them. What kind of example were we setting for them? How could I explain this? I wanted to protect them from the fallout, but the weight of this betrayal felt unbearable. They were so young, too young to understand the complexities of adult relationships. Minutes turned into hours, and eventually, I heard Emily's footsteps approaching me. I felt a wave of anxiety crash over me. She sat down beside me, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't. "I'm so sorry," she said softly, her voice shaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid, and I let my emotions take over. I love you, and I want to fix this." "I don't know if I can believe that right now," I replied, my voice hoarse. "You say you love me, but how can you love me and do this? You've betrayed me in the worst way." "I know, and I hate myself for it," she pleaded, her eyes glistening with tears. I was lost. I didn't know how to talk to you. I felt like you were shutting me out, and instead of coming to you, I turned to him. The pain in her eyes tugged at something inside me, but it was too raw, too fresh. "You should have talked to me. We could have worked through it together. I would have listened. I would have tried." "I know. I messed up, and I'm so sorry," she cried, wiping her eyes. "Please, I don't want to lose you. I need you to understand how much I regret it. It was just a mistake." I looked at her then, really looked. This was the woman I had loved, but now she felt like a stranger. The gulf between us felt insurmountable. "You say it was a mistake, but it was more than that. You made a choice. You chose to be with him, to betray me. That's not something you can just dismiss. Also, dear viewers, do not forget to like and subscribe to new interesting stories published every day, and so on." She reached out to touch my arm, but I flinched away, unable to handle the intimacy of it all. I felt suffocated by the weight of her presence. The warmth that used to comfort me now felt like a reminder of everything I had lost. "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I thought we were in this together. I thought I could trust you." And there it was, my heart laid bare, a raw wound that was just starting to bleed. In that moment, I felt so helpless, caught between the love I still had for her and the betrayal that cut me to my core. I had to figure out what to do next, but I didn't even know where to begin. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she stared at me, waiting for some sign of hope. But all I felt was an overwhelming sense of loss. The weight of our years together felt heavier than ever, and I knew, no matter how much we both wanted to fix things, we had a long and painful road ahead. "I just need some time," I said finally, my heart aching with the weight of those words. "I need to think about everything." With that, I stood up and walked away, leaving Emily on the couch, her sobs echoing in the hollow silence of our home. The next few days dragged on like a never-ending fog. I went through the motions of daily life, getting the kids ready for school, making meals, and trying to act normal. But inside, I felt like I was crumbling. I spent hours staring at the wall in our living room, contemplating everything. I couldn't shake the images of Emily with Fred from my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. The way she smiled at him, the way she kissed him, the connection they shared that felt so foreign to me now. Emily was walking on eggshells around the house, desperately trying to show me she was remorseful. but it didn't change the truth of what had happened. I appreciated her efforts, but the pain was still fresh. I felt like I was living in a bubble, and every time she reached out to me, it was like a prick of a needle, sharp and jarring. I knew I had to make a decision about our future. My heart was torn. I loved her and had built a life with her, but could I ever truly forgive her? I started keeping a journal, pouring my thoughts onto the pages, trying to make sense of my emotions. Writing it out helped, but it was also a painful reminder of the reality I was facing. As the days turned into weeks, I felt the pressure to decide weighing heavier on my chest. I had a long conversation with a close friend who had gone through a similar experience. Listening to his story helped, but it also made me realize that my situation was unique. The choice was ultimately mine, and I needed to own it. One night, after tucking the kids into bed, I found myself in the living room again, staring blankly at the TV, which was off. The house was silent, except for the faint sound of Emily crying softly in our bedroom. My heart ached for her, but the betrayal still felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. I couldn't keep living in limbo, feeling like a ghost in my own home. I needed closure for both of us. So I took a deep breath and walked down the hallway, pushing open the bedroom door. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes red and puffy, glistening with unshed tears. "I want to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Okay, please, let's talk." I sat down across from her, the distance between us a chasm filled with unspoken words. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us and what happened." She nodded, biting her lip, waiting for me to continue. "I love you, Emily. I really do," I began, feeling the weight of those words. "But I don't know if I can get past this. I don't know if I can forgive you for what you did. It feels like you broke something in me that may never be fixed." "I understand," she said, tears spilling over her cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you. I'm so sorry for everything." "I know you're sorry," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "But sorry doesn't change what happened. I've read a lot about infidelity, and I understand that it's complicated. I know we had our issues, but I can't ignore the fact that you sought comfort in someone else. It feels like a betrayal of everything we built together." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, needing to maintain the emotional distance between us. "I think we need to take some time apart," I said finally, the words tasting bitter as they left my lips. "I need space to think about what I want. I need to figure out if I can truly move forward with you." The air between us felt heavy, as if time had stopped. Emily looked crushed, and the sight twisted my heart even more. "Please don't say that. I'll do anything to prove to you that I can change. I love you, and I want our family back together," she begged. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my resolve. "I love you too, but right now I can't see a way forward that doesn't involve some distance. I don't want this to be the end, but we need to face the reality of what's happened." Emily nodded slowly, tears flowing freely now. "I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just didn't want to lose you." "I don't want to lose you either," I admitted, feeling a swell of emotion rise up. "But I can't pretend everything is fine. I need to find out if we can rebuild trust. Maybe this time apart will help us both see things more clearly." The next few days were filled with an uncomfortable silence. I started staying at a friend's place, giving both of us the space we needed. The absence of her presence was deafening, yet it also provided a chance for reflection. I would lie awake at night, contemplating our past, our future, and whether the love we once shared could ever be rekindled. As I moved through the motions of separation, I began to realize that while I didn't want to throw away all we had built, I couldn't ignore the reality of what had happened. I needed to decide if I could forgive her, and if we could work through this together, or if we were better off apart. It was a painful process, but I knew it was necessary. I had to make a choice, not just for myself, but for our kids, too. Would we be able to rebuild, or was this the beginning of a new chapter in our lives, separately? Only time would tell. The days turned into weeks, and as I settled into my friend's place, I found some clarity amidst the chaos. I spent countless hours reflecting on our relationship, how it had blossomed, how it had become strained, and ultimately, how it had broken. I realized I needed to confront my own feelings and fears. I wasn't just grappling with Emily's betrayal, I was also battling my insecurities and doubts about my worthiness in this relationship. The kids visited me often, their innocent laughter a bittersweet reminder of what I had to lose. I cherished those moments, but also felt a deep sadness knowing they had no idea of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface of our family. I often found myself wondering how this would affect them. Would they blame their mother? Would they resent me for not being there? These thoughts weighed heavily on my heart. During one of our visits, I watched them play in the backyard, their joy infectious. I realized I wanted them to have a stable, loving environment, and that stability required me to make a decision, not just for myself, but for them. I owed it to my kids to figure out what kind of family we would be moving forward. After a month of separation, I felt ready to face Emily again. I called her and suggested we meet at a nearby park, a neutral ground away from the tension of home. As I approached the park, I could see her sitting on a bench, nervously twisting her hands in her lap. She looked up as I approached, her eyes wide with a mix of hope and anxiety. "Hey," I said, sitting down beside her. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," she replied, her voice shaky. "I've missed you so much." Also, dear viewers, do not forget to like and subscribe to new interesting stories published every day and so on. "I've missed you too," I admitted, feeling a pang of nostalgia for the simpler times we shared. "But I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I need to be honest with you about where I'm at." "Okay," she said, her expression earnest, as if she were holding her breath, waiting for my next words. "I believe we can heal from this, but it's going to take a lot of work from both of us. I can't just sweep this under the rug. I need to know you're committed to rebuilding our trust and being open with me about everything," I said, feeling my heart race as I spoke. "I promise I will," she said quickly, her eyes welling up with tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. I know I messed up, and I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm serious about making this work." "I appreciate that, but it can't just be talk. We need to communicate better, and I need you to understand how much this has affected me," I continued, trying to maintain my composure. "I want to believe in us again, but it's going to take time. I need to feel secure in this relationship." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I love you, and I don't want to lose you." "I love you too," I replied, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within me. "But we need to be patient with each other. This isn't going to be easy, and I can't promise it'll be quick. I think counseling could really help us navigate this." "Absolutely. I'm willing to try anything," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. As we sat together, the weight of our conversation hung in the air. It felt heavy, but there was also a glimmer of light peeking through the clouds. I realized that healing takes time, and while the scars of betrayal would remain, there was potential for growth and renewal. Over the following months, we began to rebuild our relationship slowly. We went to therapy together, learning how to communicate more openly and honestly. It was challenging, and there were days when I wanted to give up, days when the pain felt insurmountable. But with each session, we uncovered layers of our relationship that we hadn't explored before. Our fears, our desires, and the reasons we fell in love in the first place. As we navigated this journey, I began to see the glimmers of the woman I had fallen in love with. The laughter returned to our home, though it was tinged with the memory of our struggles. The kids sensed the change and thrived in the renewed atmosphere. We started doing things as a family again. Game nights, movie marathons, and even weekend hikes. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of doubt and insecurity. But I learned to trust the process, to lean into the discomfort, and to embrace the uncertainty of rebuilding. Emily worked hard to regain my trust, and with each passing day, I found myself slowly forgiving her. Through this experience, I learned that love is not just about the good times. It's also about navigating the storms together. It's about acknowledging the pain and choosing to grow through it. If I could offer advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this. Don't shy away from the hard conversations. Face the truth, no matter how painful it may be. Seek help if you need it, and be open to the possibility of healing. Relationships can be messy, but with honesty, effort, and love, they can also be profoundly beautiful. As I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun set with Emily beside me, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We had come a long way, and while the journey was far from over, I was ready to walk it with her. step by step. Together, we were learning how to love each other better than before. And for now, that was enough. Thanks for watching. You were on Storm to Truth channel. New stories that will pleasantly surprise you will be every day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.